He never lost a single battle, and yet he died in exile, begging Rome not to bury him in the city he had saved. Picture this. It is 1883 BC. On the western coast of Italy, in a small farming village called Liternum, an old man is dying. He is not surrounded by senators or generals. No crowds, no triumph, no garlands. Just a simple farm, some olive trees, a cold stone floor. His name is Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. And 20 years ago, this same man stood at the center of the known world. He had defeated Hannibal, the greatest military mind of antiquity. He had saved Rome from total annihilation. He had conquered Spain, shattered Carthage's empire, and bent the entire western Mediterranean to Roman will. Historians called him the greatest general of his age. Some said he was the greatest general who had ever lived. And now he was here, in voluntary exile, alone, bitter. He left one instruction before he died: do not bury me in Rome. The city he gave his life for did not deserve his bones. That is the story we are telling today. Not just a story about war, not just a story about Rome, a story about what happens when a man becomes too great for the world he saved. Here is the central question. How does a man who never lost a single battle end up losing everything? Was Scipio Africanus a victim of jealousy? Was he brought down by political enemies who feared his power? Or did he carry within himself a flaw, a seed of his own destruction that no military genius could overcome? Because Scipio was not just a great general. He was also a man of extraordinary pride. A man who genuinely believed the rules of the Roman Republic did not fully apply to him. A man who, when given the chance to defend himself, instead tore up the evidence and walked away. Was that courage or arrogance? To understand why that moment happened, we have to go back to the very beginning, to the boy who watched his father nearly die, and decided at 17 years old that he would never be helpless again. But before we get to Zama, we need to understand something about Scipio that most people miss. His greatest strength and his greatest weakness were the exact same thing. Scipio was born around 2036 BC into one of Rome's most illustrious families. His father was a consul. His grandfather had been a consul. His great-grandfather, a consul. This was a family that did not merely participate in Roman history. They were Roman history. From birth, Scipio was trained to lead, trained to fight, trained to win. But training and expectation are not the same thing as experience. And experience arrived for Scipio in the most brutal way possible. He was 17 years old in 218 BC when Hannibal crossed the Alps. Think about what that meant for a young Roman boy. Your entire world, everything you have been raised to believe is invincible, suddenly faces an enemy unlike anything Rome has ever seen. Hannibal does not just win battles. He destroys Roman armies. He outthinks, he outmaneuvers, he waits. In the very first year of the Second Punic War, Scipio's father, the consul Publius Cornelius Scipio the Elder, leads his army against Hannibal near the Ticinus River in northern Italy. It goes badly. The Roman cavalry is overwhelmed. The elder Scipio is wounded, surrounded. And this is the moment the young Scipio, 17 years old, charges forward, alone, into the chaos. He pushes through Hannibal's cavalry, reaches his father, and creates enough disruption that his father's escort can pull the consul to safety. He saved his father's life. That is an extraordinary thing for a teenager to do, and the ancient sources, Livy, Polybius, record it with awe. But think about what that moment did to Scipio's psychology. At 17, in his first real engagement, he acted alone when everyone else froze. He trusted his own judgment over the chaos around him, and it worked. That lesson, that personal initiative, personal courage, personal genius, was the lesson that defined his entire life. It was also the lesson that would eventually destroy him, because when you learn at 17 that the rules don't apply to you, you spend the rest of your life proving it. 2 years later comes the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC. Cannae is the worst defeat in Roman history. Hannibal engineers a double envelopment, a pincer movement, that traps roughly 70,000 Roman soldiers and kills most of them in a single afternoon. The Senate is paralyzed. Rome itself is in panic. Citizens wonder if the city will fall. In the aftermath, some surviving Roman officers begin discussing the unthinkable, abandoning Italy, sailing away, desertion of the highest order, and it is Scipio, still barely 20 years old, who stops it. He draws his sword in front of the deserters. He makes them swear an oath. He arrests the ringleaders, not because someone ordered him to, because he decided it was necessary. Do you see the pattern? Scipio does not wait for permission. He does not defer to hierarchy. When the situation demands action, Scipio acts, and he is usually right. This is an extraordinary quality in a military commander. It is a catastrophic quality in a politician. But that realization is still decades away. For now, Rome needs him. Then came the worst blow of all. In 211 BC, both Scipio's father and his uncle are killed in Spain, defeated by Carthaginian forces, their armies destroyed, the Roman position in Spain on the verge of collapse. Rome has no one to send. The situation is desperate, and Scipio, 24 years old, never having held a senior command, volunteers for the job. He is elected to the command by popular assembly, essentially bypassing the normal Senate process. And with that, everything changes. What Scipio did next in Spain shocked everyone, because it wasn't just military genius. It was something more dangerous. It was a new kind of leadership, and that would make his enemies even more afraid of him. When Scipio arrives in Spain, the Roman cause looks hopeless. The Carthaginians control the peninsula. They have 3 separate armies. They have allies, they have supply lines. Rome has a demoralized remnant clinging to the northern coast. Scipio does something no one expects. He attacks Cartagena, New Carthage, the enemy's primary supply base, treasury and communications hub on the Iberian coast. In a single, brilliant, coordinated assault, naval and land forces working in perfect synchrony, Scipio captures the city in one day. It is a masterstroke. It changes the entire strategic situation in Spain overnight. But the how is as important as the what. Scipio does not fight the way Roman generals are supposed to fight. He doesn't line up his legions and push forward. He studies the enemy. He watches their weaknesses. He looks for the leverage point. He is innovative in a tradition that despised innovation. He adopts Spanish swords when Roman swords prove inferior. He trains his men differently. He treats the Spanish tribes not as subjects to be conquered, but as potential allies to be cultivated. He releases prisoners. He shows mercy when Roman generals showed iron. This shocked the Senate back in Rome. Mercy was not a Roman virtue. Austerity was. Discipline was. Coldness was. Scipio's enemies, and he was already accumulating them, saw this as weakness, or worse, as something foreign. He was too fond of Greek culture. He spent too much time in Greek gymnasiums. He spoke Greek, thought in Greek terms, admired Greek philosophy. To men like Marcus Porcius Cato, Cato the Elder, the iron conservative of the Roman Senate, Scipio represented something genuinely threatening, not military threat, cultural threat. Cato believed Rome's greatness came from its simplicity, its austerity, its refusal to be seduced by foreign elegance. Scipio believed Rome's greatness could be enhanced by wisdom from outside. That being Roman did not mean being narrow. These two men would spend the next 30 years in a war that had nothing to do with armies. But first, Scipio had to finish what he started. By 206 BC, after a series of brilliant campaigns, Scipio has driven the Carthaginians completely out of Spain. He returns to Rome a hero. He is elected consul at 30 years old, technically too young under Roman law. They bend the rules for him. That is worth remembering. At this point in his life, Scipio's greatness was so undeniable that Rome bent its own rules to accommodate him. He proposes something audacious. Take the war to Africa itself, not defend Italy. Attack Carthage. The Senate is divided. Many call it reckless. Fabius Maximus, the great Roman strategist known as the delayer, argues against it. But the people want Scipio. The people always want Scipio. He gets his command. In 24 BC, Scipio lands in Africa. He is not just fighting Carthage now. He is fighting against the military alliance of Carthage and Numidia. He is outnumbered. He is far from home, and one of Hannibal's greatest lieutenants is still in the field. Then comes Zama, 202 BC. Hannibal himself faces Scipio across the field. Let that settle in. The two greatest military minds of their generation, face to face. One meeting that would determine the fate of Western civilization. Before the battle, they actually meet. They talk. The ancient sources describe this encounter with something close to reverence. Two men who understood each other, who admired each other, facing the necessity of destruction. Hannibal proposes terms, a negotiated peace that leaves Carthage its African empire. Scipio refuses. He came too far. He risked too much. Rome needs a decisive victory, not a compromise. They return to their lines. The battle begins. Hannibal deploys his war elephants to break the Roman formation. Scipio, who has prepared specifically for this, opens lanes in his lines, allows the elephants to charge through harmlessly, then closes the formation behind them. The tactic works perfectly. In the subsequent fighting, Scipio outmaneuvers Hannibal's veterans with his Numidian cavalry allies. The Carthaginian army collapses. Hannibal escapes, barely. The Second Punic War is over. Rome is safe. Scipio Africanus. He earns that name now. Africanus, the man who conquered Africa, returns home to the greatest triumph Rome had ever seen. He is 33 years old. He has just saved Western civilization. And somewhere in Rome, Cato the Elder is watching, calculating, furious. Because here's what most people don't understand. The victory at Zama didn't end Scipio's enemies. It created new ones. And those enemies didn't fight with swords. After Zama, Scipio Africanus is not just famous. He is something Rome had never really seen before. He is beloved, universally, by the people, by the soldiers, by the allies. The Greek historian Polybius, who knew him personally, called him virtually the most outstanding man in history. Soldiers who served under him wrote about him with the kind of devotion usually reserved for gods. He projected something, a sense of destiny, of divine favor, that ancient writers took seriously. He claimed he had visitations from the gods. He would spend time alone in the temple of Jupiter before making important decisions. He fostered a legend around himself, deliberately, carefully, that he was more than just a man. In a republic that was obsessed with preventing any single man from becoming a king, this was extraordinarily dangerous behavior. But Scipio didn't care. Or rather, he didn't fully understand why Rome cared. Because in his mind, the rules were for lesser men. He had proven that. Repeatedly. After his triumph, Scipio does not retire to his laurels. He remains active in Roman politics. He shapes foreign policy. He uses his prestige to push Rome toward a more expansive, sophisticated relationship with the Greek and Eastern Mediterranean world. In 1903 BC, he serves as ambassador. In 1990 BC, when Rome goes to war against the Syrian king Antiochus III, another enormous conflict in the Eastern Mediterranean, Scipio maneuvers his brother Lucius into the consulship so that the Scipio family can lead the campaign. And here is where the real danger begins to grow. Because Scipio's power is no longer just military, it is political, it is cultural, it is almost dynastic. He is not elected to an office. He holds no formal title. But everyone in Rome knows that where Scipio speaks, policy follows. Where Scipio points, armies march. This was the thing Rome's constitution was specifically designed to prevent. The Roman Republic was built on the idea of shared power, collective authority, the rotation of magistracies. No single man, no matter how talented, should be allowed to accumulate the kind of influence Scipio now possessed. Cato the Elder was not wrong to be alarmed. He just decided to do something about it. And this is where everything changed. There was a single moment, a single decision, where Scipio could have ended the crisis before it destroyed him. He chose not to. And we need to understand why. 1887 BC, Lucius Scipio returns from the campaign against Antiochus with enormous spoils, money, art, hostages, territory, a massive Roman victory in the east. But Cato sees his opening. There is a discrepancy in the accounts. Money received from Antiochus as part of the war settlement, a relatively small sum by the standards of the campaign, cannot be properly documented. Cato puts forward tribunes to demand an accounting, not just of Lucius, but of the entire Scipio political machine. This is the moment. Scipio Africanus, the greatest general Rome has ever produced, the man who saved the Republic, appears before the Senate. He has the account books, he has the documentation, he could answer the charges. Instead, he tears the books apart with his own hands. Right there, in front of the Senate, he is not guilty, almost certainly not guilty. The charges are invented, politically motivated, completely out of proportion to the actual facts. But Scipio doesn't try to prove his innocence. He is outraged that they dare ask. He reportedly says, "Why are you concerned about a few missing sesterces, when Lucius Scipio has enriched the Roman treasury by hundreds of millions?" He is right, factually, completely right, and it makes no difference at all. Because in Rome, the form mattered as much as the substance. Being asked to account for yourself, that was not an insult. That was the Republic. That was the system. Every general accounted for his spoils. Every magistrate could be scrutinized. Scipio believed that his service had elevated him above the need for scrutiny. Rome disagreed, and in that disagreement, in that single moment of contemptuous pride, Scipio handed his enemies everything they needed. He doesn't just refuse to defend himself. He storms out of Rome. He withdraws to his country estate in Liternum, on Italy's western coast. He is not arrested. He is not convicted. He simply leaves. And that is a kind of defeat he was never prepared for. Think about the psychology of this. Scipio had spent his entire life in situations where action was the answer. Faced with a threat, charge. Faced with a crisis, act. Faced with the impossible, find the elegant solution no one else has seen. But the political attack from Cato was a different kind of warfare. It didn't need him to be guilty. It just needed to exhaust him, to embarrass him, to force him to play a game of small indignities until his reputation crumbled. And Scipio was constitutionally incapable of playing that game. His pride was not simple vanity. It was structural. It was load-bearing. The entire architecture of his self-image rested on being above ordinary rules. To submit to a tribunal, to stand there and answer charges while small men questioned his honor, would have destroyed something inside him more completely than any military defeat. So he chose exile over humiliation, and that choice had consequences he could not undo. At first, Scipio's departure seems like a gesture, a statement. Rome will surely come to its senses. The people love him. The soldiers revere him. Surely this political attack will fade. It does not fade. 184 BC. Cato is elected censor, the most powerful office in Rome for the preservation of traditional values. It is not a coincidence. And now the attacks intensify. This time, they come directly for Scipio himself. He is personally accused of bribery, of having accepted money from Antiochus in exchange for favorable peace terms, of having been bought. Scipio is ordered to return to Rome to face trial. He refuses. What happens next is one of history's most remarkable scenes. Scipio returns to Rome, not to face trial, but to protect his brother Lucius, who is threatened with imprisonment. He manages to derail the charges against Lucius, helped by his future son-in-law, a young senator named Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus. But then, on the day he is supposed to face his own trial, Scipio does something extraordinary. He walks to the Capitol. It is the anniversary of the Battle of Zama, the anniversary of the day he saved Rome. He does not walk alone. The people of Rome follow him. Senators follow him. The crowds that had gathered to watch his humiliation end up in a spontaneous procession to the temples. His accusers are left standing in an empty chamber. It is a theatrical triumph, a final act of defiance, and it changes nothing. Scipio returns to Liternum. He never comes back. The last years of his life are a slow dimming. He had given Rome its empire, defeated its greatest enemy, built the strategic foundations of what would become the most powerful civilization in the ancient world. Now he farmed. Ancient writers who visited him in those final years describe a man living simply, a small farmhouse, a cold stone bathroom, working his own fields. His biographer notes the contrast with the opulent Roman lifestyle of later generations. Seneca would later point to Scipio's cramped bathroom as a lesson in simplicity. But the simplicity was not chosen, it was accepted. There is a difference. He was ill, bitter, exhausted. In 1803 BC, possibly the same year his enemy Hannibal died by suicide, rather than be captured by Rome, Scipio Africanus died in Liternum. His epitaph, reportedly written by himself, was brief and devastating. Ungrateful fatherland, you shall not even have my bones. He was not buried in the family tomb near Rome. He died in the place he had retreated to, and he stayed there. There is a strange irony at the end of Scipio's story. After his death, Rome slowly reclaimed him. The same families who had supported his persecution gradually allowed his memory to be rehabilitated. His victories were celebrated again. His tactical innovations were studied. His name became a symbol of Roman greatness. He became in death exactly what the Republic had refused to allow him to be in life. Too great, too singular, too important to be contained. But the real lesson of Scipio Africanus is not about military genius. It is about the gap between what a man believes himself to be and what the world will allow. Scipio was right about almost everything. His strategy was correct. His campaigns were masterful. His vision for Rome, expansive, sophisticated, culturally confident, was closer to what Rome would actually become than anything Cato ever imagined. And none of that mattered, because greatness in a republic is a political problem. A republic survives not by rewarding its greatest man, but by ensuring no single man becomes too great to challenge. Rome was terrified of kings. Terrified. It ran in the blood of every senator. 200 years before Scipio, they had driven out the Tarquin kings with furious violence. A man who accumulated too much prestige, too much devotion, too much influence, threatened the entire structure of shared power that made the Republic function. Scipio Africanus genuinely did not understand this, or he understood it and simply didn't care. He believed his service had transcended the rules, that what he had done for Rome entitled him to a different kind of existence within it, that the Republic should be grateful enough to look away. The Republic was not grateful. The Republic was afraid. And here is the haunting thing. Cato the Elder, the small, austere, relentless man who hated everything Scipio represented, outlived him, outlived his rivals, continued shaping Roman culture for decades. And Cato was not entirely wrong. The qualities that made Scipio dangerous, the willingness to bypass rules, the personal loyalty of soldiers to their general over the state, the accumulation of political power around a single charismatic figure, these were the exact qualities that 200 years later would produce Julius Caesar, Augustus, and the end of the Republic itself. Cato feared the prototype. He was right to fear it. He was wrong to destroy the man who had it. Because Scipio was not trying to become a king. He was not building an army for personal ambition. He was not plotting a coup. He was simply a man who was too large for the frame Rome had built for great men. And when the frame couldn't hold him, they pushed him out rather than build a bigger frame. He saved Rome. Rome couldn't handle him. And in the end, the thing that killed him was not Carthage, not Hannibal, not any enemy he had ever faced on any battlefield. It was pride, and the Republic's equal and opposite fear of it. Two forces that could not coexist. Two forces that destroyed each other and left us, 2,000 years later, standing over a small grave on the Italian coast, wondering what might have been. If you found this story compelling, the full complexity of Scipio, the world he fought in, the political forces that shaped Rome, drop a comment about which part surprised you most. And if you want to go deeper on Rome's greatest figures and the system that made and broke them, subscribe.